Hey, what's up everyone? John here from testprepinsight.com, and today I'm going to be doing an updated review of Duolingo. As some of you may know, Duolingo dropped a massive update in November of 2022 that completely overhauled how the app works, and it has really upset a huge portion of the user base, with some people even saying that it's the equivalent of the new Coke versus old Coke controversy from the 80s. So today I'm going to cover what the app looks like and how it works post-update, what I like and don't like about the changes, and give you a final verdict of whether Duolingo is even still worth it. And just a heads up that since I'll just be covering the major highlights in this video and trying to keep things short, if you find you need more detail at any point, you can always check out our detailed written review over on our website. An easy way to get there is just to Google Test Prep Insight Duolingo. It's the quickest way to find it. So the biggest change with Duolingo has been the switch from the tree format to the path. Basically, Duolingo used to have a pretty flexible learning format where you could pick and choose what you wanted to work on and learn. I've got some old footage of the tree that I'll pull up here on screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Which, by the way, is the desktop version of Duolingo just because it's easier to grab for YouTube, but just know that the mobile app version is basically the same. Anyway, you could do basic exercises like matching vocab words, or listen to short stories, learn how to order food, or talk about sports, or you could always jump to old lessons to review, or work on legendary status. In other words, you could essentially drive what and how you wanted to learn. Now, with this update, however, it has turned the tree into a linear path. Rather than optionality, you work on a straight line through lessons. The lessons are organized into units on the path, and there are hundreds of units to complete to finish the entire language course. Basically, the units are kind of like the old checkpoints. And the crown system is also gone. It's been replaced in essence by the path. So rather than earning different crown levels within a particular skill on the tree, they've taken the same lessons and spread them out across the path. Plus, another change is that they've taken stories, which used to be separate on the dashboard, and integrated them directly into the learning path. They're no longer separately accessible under a different tab. Actually, I take that back. You can review old stories you've already completed under the path under the practice tab, but it's not like before where you could do a new story whenever you wanted. Also, tips are now gone and replaced by a guidebook at the start of each unit, and that's actually a good opportunity to explain how Duolingo does grammar instruction. Rather than build grammar directly into their lesson work like how Babbel and Pimsleur do it, Duolingo used to provide grammar tips with each skill on the tree. Now, however, they've dialed the grammar back a bit and put it into the form of a guidebook at the start of each unit on your path. I'll talk about this in a minute when I get to my actual thoughts on these changes. And finally, last update worth mentioning is how Duolingo has taken practice work and layered it into the path as well, based on a spaced repetition model, as opposed to letting people practice of their own volition. So that's really it for the big updates. The path has replaced the learning tree, stories are now woven into the path, the grammar tips are now guidebooks at the start of each unit, and practice is also worked into the path like stories. Otherwise, the content of each lesson remains the same. The exercises and drills that make up the heart of Duolingo remain relatively unchanged. I'll throw some footage of the old Duo version up here on screen so you can see what those drills are like versus what the exercises look like today. Not too different. You've still got the basic matching pairs, translation exercises, speaking drills, and writing exercises. It's really the same core exercises each day with the same funny little characters and motion graphics. And by the way, again, I know I'm kind of flying through this, so if you want to see some examples of the new Duolingo user interface and format, make sure to check out that full detailed written review I mentioned earlier. I'll have it linked down below in the description for you. I have screenshots and more detail over there so you can get a better feel for what to expect. Okay, so now let's get into what I like and don't like about this update. And let's start with the negatives, because there seems to be a lot more criticism of these changes than there is praise for it. So let's start with the bad news. The biggest downfall of this update in my eyes is how difficult it has become to navigate through this course. If you want to go forward or backward, you have to scroll for an eternity. Basically, you have to follow the new path all the way up or all the way down. The old Duolingo was not like this. The old user interface had easy to read lesson names and icons so you could tell exactly what each skill or level was about. Now, the issue with this has to do with going back to review. Before, it was really easy to go back to older lessons to get more crowns and work on legendary status. But now you have to scroll a long ways, and you're just guessing at what each step in the path covers because they're not individually labeled. For example, say you're at Unit 50 of the German course. I know I'm not here on screen, but say you've managed to work your way up to Unit 50. However, your legendary status only goes to Unit 20. That means you're going to need to scroll 30 units up to find your legendary progress. And even at that, you won't even have a good idea of what you're reviewing because the steps aren't labeled. This is kind of a big deal because, for example, let's say you're getting ready for a trip and you want to review the lessons on ordering in a restaurant and asking for directions. These particular lessons are now much harder to find for those specific reviews. So bottom line, it's not a huge substantive issue, but it's definitely annoying. Frankly, I feel like a really easy fix for Duolingo would just be to collapse the path view down for all but the current unit. Basically just allow you to scroll through unit headers with labels of what's within each in order to find what you're looking for. That would be a nice improvement. Okay, so that was my big one, but the second complaint I have about the update is grammar. So Duolingo has really scaled back their grammar instruction by doing away with tips. The new grammar guidebooks that are appended to the beginning of each section are helpful and contain some of the same material from the old tips sections, but honestly, they feel kind of neutered. It feels like these more robust grammar tips have been replaced with a few example phrases and teaching points. It's not a great way of managing grammar instruction. Okay, so for my third negative here, something else I've noticed is that the program overall just feels a bit easier. Now, it could just be me, but it feels like post-update, the program is much heavier on repetition. Every stepping stone on the path just hammers the same phrases and concepts over and over. I might be more acute to the differences post-update, or maybe it's just the new linear format, but I've also seen other Duolingo users say this as well. The program overall just feels a little bit more repetitive and easier. Then, my fourth knock is something I actually haven't experienced myself since I paid for Super Duolingo, their ad-free premium version, but I've heard from a lot of people that on the free plan, the ads are much heavier and more frequent after this update. And this doesn't really shock me. If we're being honest, one of the biggest points of the update for Duolingo was to get more people to upgrade to the paid Super Duolingo. They say this major change was for improved learning science and user experience, but if we're being real, part of it was driven by the desire to get more people to upgrade from free to paid. The free version under the new format is harder to navigate than if you have the paid version, and with the heavier ad impressions, I just think they're really trying to get people to pay up for Super version. And lastly, my final complaint is pretty quick, but I feel like Duolingo has gotten really stingy with their XP points. Completing a lesson these days is worth a measly 5 or 10 XP points. It used to be way more. Now, I know XP points is just a number and it isn't as important as your streak, but it's still annoying when you're used to getting more XP points. So I don't like that they've made points harder to earn. Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about the things that I actually do like about the Duolingo update. But before I get to that, I do just want to mention that every single month here at Test Prep Insight, we actually give away a free language learning subscription to one lucky person. It's super simple to enter. Everyone out there is eligible. I'll put all the details down below in the description, but just know that it takes like less than 10 seconds to enter, and hey, you never know, you could win a totally free subscription to Super Duolingo. Anyway, the first positive with this update for me is that even though everyone loved the old tree and skills framework, the reality is that it wasn't perfect either. Because you could jump around to learn whatever you want, it gave the program a very hodgepodge type of feel. In fact, that's why Duolingo had suggested ways of using the program, like the waterfall method, which not that many people used. The reality is that there are a lot of people with 1,000+ day streaks who still have low confidence in their target language. They just don't feel comfortable jumping in and holding conversations. And the reason for this, at least as the Duolingo folks see it, was the lack of structure. People use these modules willy-nilly and there just was no flow to the program. That's why with the new path structure, they've placed a big focus on progressive building. The lessons all build on one another, and even the stories have consistent characters which get developed along the way. This update just brings the Duolingo courses in line with other language learning apps that are more structured and help people to work through language programs in an orderly fashion. So while people are complaining about the loss of flexibility, I do think there is some merit here. Alright, so another aspect of this update that I actually like is how they've built practice sessions right into the path. Every few lessons, you'll get a review session that forces you to practice stuff you've already learned. This is a change from the past program where it was sort of on you to manage your own reviews and practice work. This built-in practice work ensures you're regularly revisiting material, which is crucial for language learning. Spaced repetition is a huge factor in internalizing a new language, and I think this new format will ultimately help learners develop a stronger foundation long-term as they stick with it. And lastly, my final positive is that the app is still fun. Yes, it's more rigid, and there are definitely some negatives with the changes that they've made, but the content is still the same. Lessons only take 5 or 10 minutes, you still get to compete against other users in leagues, you can still do friend quests, you can still earn gems, lingots, and XP points, and all the same little characters and motion graphics are still there. In other words, the gamification aspect of language learning with Duolingo that everyone loves is still there front and center. And I really like that, even if you don't get as many XP points per session. And that brings me to my closing thoughts. Is Duolingo worth it? Or is it time to consider another app? Well, honestly, my thoughts on Duolingo haven't really changed that much post-update. Even before the major changes, I thought Duolingo was best used as a supplemental tool and not a standalone language learning program. There's a good reason why people with 1,000-day streaks still complain about not feeling comfortable and confident in their conversational abilities. It's because Duolingo is a brain game, not a full-blown language course. That's why I would say that if you're just looking to learn some basic phrases and elementary level understanding of a language before a trip overseas, then Duolingo is great for that. Go for it. But if you're serious about becoming fluent in another language at an intermediate to advanced level of fluency, you've got to get another language app like Babbel, Pimsleur, or Rocket Languages, which is more robust, and then supplement with Duolingo. That's where I see Duolingo being the most beneficial, as a complementary tool to a more comprehensive language course. And if you want to see my reviews of other language apps that I like, make sure to check out the description below. I'll have links down there to my top picks. But anyway, that's all I've got for you. I hope this video was helpful and you learned a little something about Duolingo. If so, make sure to return the favor by subscribing to our channel, liking this video, and dropping me a quick comment below. That would be really appreciated. And again, if you want to see our full detailed written review of the Duolingo app, make sure to check out our website, testprepinsight.com, or see the other videos on our YouTube channel. We got a bunch of great content out there. But as always, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.